Good afternoon, everybody, and good evening to those of you in Ukraine. My name is Alexa Chapivsky. I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Foreign Policy Group. Welcome to 1-year anniversary of the Ukraine War, stories of courage and total resistance, everyday heroes, and the role of civil society in defending freedom and democracy. We're thrilled that you're joining us today for this conversation. In the context of the Women, Peace, and Security agenda, Ukraine and the women of Ukraine are demonstrating to the rest of the world a best-in-class example of the role civil society plays in realizing change and commitments to women, peace, and security. We have a vibrant group of women who are going to be led. The conductor of our orchestra today is Daniel Bilak. It's my honor to introduce him as the moderator. Daniel is Canadian born of Ukrainian heritage. He's lived in Ukraine for over 30 years. He trained as a lawyer in Canada. He's a partner now with Kinsteller and director of the firm's Ukraine practice. Prior to joining Kinsteller, he was the chief investment advisor to the Prime Minister of Ukraine, and he headed Ukraine Invest, the government's foreign direct investment promotion agency. Daniel currently serves in the Territorial Defense Forces, a branch of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. And without further ado, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Dan Bilak. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Alexa. And thank you to our panelists and to everybody who's on this Zoom event for participating. I have to tell you, I am deeply, deeply humbled to be doing this today. Alexa can tell you the trepidation with which I accepted this offer to do it. But as a father of 4 daughters, I felt it was my duty to help extract for our audience just the incredible power and fortitude that Ukrainian women have, and what a driving force they are in this society. I think that's probably a great place to start, because this war has shown that Ukrainians are all in. This is a war of total resistance. Every aspect of society is involved. You're either on the front or you're working for the front, and you're either doing that from Ukraine or from abroad, but everybody is all in. And this comes from this great spirit of voluntarism and self-organization that the Ukrainians have always had. We've been a country, a people of communities, as opposed to big state enterprises and institutions. But this sense of voluntarism and self-organization really came into everybody's focus during the Orange Revolution, and then during the Maidan, the revolution of dignity. And there were no distinctions. We had this Soviet, when I've been here 30 years, as Alexa says, and I came, and it was it had the Soviet male-dominated myth that with a sort of this paternalistic view of society and women's role in it. But, Ukraine has been called a matriarchate. Our women have always played a very fundamental and indeed formidable role in the organization of society. And during the Maidan, we saw men and women. There were no distinctions. There was no, them, us. Everybody was working, as they say, plech-o-plech, shoulder to shoulder, in combating tyranny and a common enemy. And there, everybody was struggling for the same things: social unity and community, democratization and justice, and responsible citizenship. And so this whole voluntarism and the idea of total resistance, both men and women, sort of just translated seamlessly into the situation with the war. And the women have played a remarkable role in this war. I wouldn't say they're unsung heroes, because every night the president, in his address to the nation, talks about both the men and women who are defending this country in all aspects. But there are 40,000 women, up to 40,000 women serving in our armed forces today. 5 to 7,000 of them are in combat roles and on the front lines. Men should be aware that our best snipers in the Ukrainian army are in fact women, and that will take respect to a whole new level. But the war has accelerated a lot of trends, and I think this is something that we want to pull out of this conversation today, especially with respect to gender equality and the role of women in society. The women have taken on a disproportionate amount of the burden of this war. They have to care for the families whose many fathers have gone to the front lines. They are in charge of extended families. They are caring for veterans. They're doing volunteer work and looking at rebuilding society as a whole. We have today 3 extraordinary women with us, and unfortunately, Olga Rudnevo could not join us. But we have Yulia Dimitrova, who's the director of the TAPS Ukraine program, and we'll find out more about that in a moment. Valeria Shumska, who's the program officer at the Halo Trust, a fascinating demining program. It's been here in Ukraine since 2014. And Dana Pavlichko, CEO of United for Ukraine and the owner of the Osnova Publishing. And if you've read anything in Ukrainian anytime over the past 10 years, it's mostly because of Dana. And Donna, why don't we start with you? I think our audience would be very interested in your own personal story. Where are you? What brought you there? What brought you to this point in your life? And what are the things that drive you?
Thank you for the question. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's such an honor to be here with such an accomplished crowd. My story, I really personally felt and feel this war because I had to leave Ukraine with 3 small children. I had to leave Kiev on the 24th of February when the city was bombed. I invested everything pretty much into my business prior to the war. And we just had to pack up and leave, go to Germany and basically start fresh. So on one hand, I still have a business in Ukraine, and I know how hard it is for the team to still make books in a time of war, to work from gas stations, to be constantly, bombed, to not have internet. And on the other hand, while in Germany, I decided that I need to do something more. I need to, not sulk or fall down. I need to do everything I can to support Ukraine. So I joined the phenomenal organization called United for Ukraine as CEO. And, this is what drives me. Do I cry, every other day? Yes. Am I inspired by all the women who are, in Germany, all over Europe with kids, how hard it is for them? Definitely. And is it hard? For sure. And when people ask me about the war, it's sometimes even very hard to explain what is happening just because it's just so horrible and traumatic. But I know that what drives me is getting up every day, every morning, not just for my kids, but for my country, and knowing that we will have to win the war, and we will win the war. And every one of us, is part of this effort.
Donna, when you were developing your business, you have a very successful publishing house. How difficult was that as a woman in Ukraine? And what were the impediments, or did you have, and who were your mentors in order to help you succeed?
I somehow powered through, and I think we did really well, and we still survived, a year of the war, which I think is tremendous success. And our current executive director is a woman, and she's wonderful, and we work with a lot of women. In Ukraine, many things are possible, and that's great. But I think that, in Ukraine, and especially now, because of the war, women just have to do so much. They have to take care of kids, they have to work, they have to pick up, maybe, their husbands are on the front lines, and they have to run a business. They have to take care of elderly relatives. It's a lot for women. And it's even a lot for me, now I have to do all this being in a foreign country and have 3 kids. So I know personally, that women are rock stars, and it's tough. The struggle is real.
Do you find that the people running your business back in Ukraine, what are they going through right now? How are you keeping the business alive?
It's them. It's their phenomenal work. I have a fantastic team. I realized with the war that I want to move on and do something else. I was really passionate about, doing something in the nonprofit sector, doing something from abroad. And I, love the people who run Osnova. They're wonderful. And frankly, we're just having fun and trying to survive, and that's it. And that's the main goal of the business. And if we can survive and people can have jobs and have fun, then that's pretty much mission accomplished.
That's great. That's great. Yulia, you're in Dnipro in central eastern Ukraine. You've had a very, very diverse background, both in politics, and in assistance, and in the military. And I'd like you to share some of that with our audience, because you've been very much involved since 2014 with the anti-terrorist operation, the war in the Donbass, as it was called. And now you're working with TAPS. We'll get to TAPS in a minute, which means Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, which is quite interesting. We'll get into that. But how did you get into that? What drove you into this organization?
Hi, everybody. It's really honor for me be here with my colleagues and to speak by such a large audience. Really, I'm a volunteer, not only since 2014. I think it's in my heart, because in my childhood, I volunteer with animals. And now, since 2014, I take care of for military people, for IDPs, for deceased families. And it's a great thing happens to me in 2016 when I was in Washington, D.C. on the program of the U.S. Department State Department, and we exchanged experience with veterans. So, and one of the meeting was with the representative of TAPS America. And I was so impressed by this meeting and everything I heard about the support program for deceased families. And I immediately understood that this is one thing that I will be doing in Ukraine. And thanks to the acquaintance with our friend Bonnie Carroll, the president of TAPS America, we were able to launch a project to support the families of fallen heroes here in Ukraine. And since 2014, 24 of February 2022, we organized a very big headquarters of volunteers to help military units, IDPs, and of course, deceased families, because now it's a huge amount of these families in Dnipro region. We have a lot of children who lost his parents. So our mission, our main work is to heal the soul and help families to live on with love and memory of loved ones who are no longer around.
We'll get to the organization and what you do in a little more detail. I still want to just unpack your background, because it's quite interesting. You're very modest. Okay. They're all very modest. Okay. From 2014, you were involved already in you were talking earlier in the Donbass. You joined the army. I think you're still a reserve officer. What drove you at that point? This was still before your TAPS, and then you went into politics. How did that change you? What was your motivation in at that time?
Okay, I just talk a bit about myself, okay, fluently. I'm mother of 3 children, and my husband and I live now in Dnipro and are engaged in development of our foundation tabs. And until 2014, I just live an ordinary life. I worked in a bank and raised my first son. But since 2014, my life has changed completely. And for myself, I clearly understood that what it means to defend the independence and freedom of one's people, not at the front, but in the rear, and helping soldiers, IDPs, deceased families. And there was the period that from 2014 to 2016, I went to the front line like a volunteer and helped soldiers. And there was an opportunity to try my hand at the city council elections and be useful to veterans and deceased families by defending their rights and helping through the levels of local self-government bodies. So I worked in the city council for 6 years and continued my volunteer activities. And in 2020, at the call of my heart, I took the oath of loyalty to the people of Ukraine, and I got the rank of reserve officer, junior lieutenant. And I believe that it's the honor of every person, you know, to swear allegiance to his state. And there is no doubt that if I am needed at the front, I will go there. No doubt.
That's
So,
a
and
great,
today-
that's a great place. That's a great place to stop and let that sink in. And we will come back to you in a minute. You can tell us about what you're doing with TAPS.
Okay.
I just want to bring in Valeria, who also a fascinating background story. Valeria, you're an IDP. You're an internally displaced person from Donetsk region and involved now in demining around the country. And people need to understand that the size and scope of this undertaking, but 30% of Ukraine's territory is mined today, and that's about the size of Great Britain. So we'll get to what you're doing with Halo Trust in a moment, but tell us a bit about your story and how you got to where you are.
Thanks for introduction, Daniel, and thanks all the organizers for the opportunity to speak and to tell people about what we are doing here. And also thanks to the attendees for coming here, for joining today. As Daniel mentioned, I come from the east of Ukraine, from a small but very beautiful village, which is close to Slovyansk. Maybe some of you have heard of that. And exactly 1 year ago, my life, life of every Ukrainian has changed. Based on some official statistics, based on the UN statistics, approximately 8 million people, they are displaced abroad, 8 million Ukrainians, and about 5.5 million people, they are internally displaced. And I'm the one of them. A week or so after the invasion, I had to leave my hometown.
This is in 2014, the invasion of 2014.
No, this is like last year ago.
Oh, last year, okay.
Yes, and I had to leave my home, my family, and now we are all separated. Some, like part of my family stays in Ukraine, some of them, they are abroad. I have worked as a humanitarian for almost 3 years now, especially with the mine action. And regarding the Halo Trust, how I found out about that, back in 2014, after some month of Russian invasion, we had some fightings in our region, and I remember myself driving from my small village to the town to run some day-to-day business to help my family. So this is I was driving from the countryside to the town, and I noticed Halo vehicles parked somewhere on the side of the road. And later on, I noticed some red warning signs, which said danger mines. And I was really impressed because I didn't know about the minefield being located like 5-minute drive from my home. And it was like the majority of the minefields in Ukraine, they are located in the tree lines. And that was the tree line where people used to go for, like, let's say, picking mushrooms or having just some fun and enjoying the nature. But because of the war, because of the hostilities, it was impossible to do that because mines and other explosive ordnance, they pose deadly threat for people. And that's how I understood how I can make some positive impact to a safer future of my native region. And that's how I joined HALA 3 years ago and still keep working in a new area.
Halo is the largest humanitarian mine clearance organization in the world. I mean, you guys operate all over the place, right? And
yeah, we work in about 30 countries around the world.
And you've been in Ukraine since 2014, since the Donbass.
We established our presence in late 2015 and started operations in 2016.
Okay, so how have your operations changed over that period of time, and what has been the role of women over the course of the last 9 years, and in particular during the course of this war? I mean, I would imagine a lot of the men, if they're doing mine clearance, they're doing it in the armed forces or in the emergency services department, big agency, because those are very important skill sets. So what has been the role of women over the course of this period, and how has it changed during the war?
So in the very beginning, when HALA just came to Ukraine, it was impossible for women to work as deminers. But then there were some amendments to the legislation, and now it's possible for women to also join to also conduct these life-saving activities. Back in the East, we already had lots of dedicated women who, regardless of all the threats, they joined the company, and on day-to-day basis, they show up to work and do this important job. Now, when the scale of contamination around the country, it has increased, and as we all know, the war is still ongoing, and we are expecting more. As you mentioned before, now like 30% of the country is contaminated. That means people they can't go back to the let's say agricultural lands and plant crops, or sometimes people even can't go to the kindergarten because there are also mines. And I'm proud to tell you about my colleagues, about my female colleagues who keep working for HALA, even though they are in some of them, they are also internally displaced, and they keep showing up to work. Some of the husbands, they are fighting, and these women, they are the only person who can look after families. And within to find the minefield, you need to spend some time. And we have some dedicated, I have a friend of mine, so she actually joined HALA together with me back 3 years ago. And now she's the person who who visits the mine-affected communities and try to identify where the mines are located. So
what does she do? Tell us what she does. Is it got a mine detector, or
so
how do the women look for these things?
So actually, the first mine clearance, land mine clearance, is very long process. And this, like my friend, she is in charge of actually finding the place where the mines are. She visited the communities where the fighting took place, and she speaks to the local people where are they, the evidence of the minefields, and where it's impossible for people to go. As soon as she sees some evidence on the ground that could be destroyed building or burned out vehicle, or even mines, anti-vehicle mines or anti-personnel mines, or grenade on the tree, she is to map these items and create a future task where the future demanding teams will come and start removing the landmines from the ground, making it possible for people to keep their lives.
You have a situation where the women are actually on their knees with knives and shovels, clearing centimeter by centimeter these mines. They're risking their lives on a daily basis.
This is the second stage, and these are really dedicated people who come. Actually, the office space is just like some tree lines or agricultural fields, and they put on protective equipment. You can see like the example just behind me. This is the vest which protects deminers, female deminers, from explosion and from fragments. And they also wear like protective visors. And their task is to spend the whole day on their knees, trying to find the explosive item and to locate it. And this is really time-consuming and physically demanding work. And regardless of these wonderful women, they keep doing the mission.
Incredible. And all of this, Halo Trust is a UK charity, UK-based charity. All of these efforts that we've been discussing require funding and people to raise money for the good works. And Donna, that's what United for Ukraine is supposed to do. And you're a Swiss-based organization, and tell us a bit about what you're involved with and how you're involving women in the security and economic development in Ukraine.
A little bit about United for Ukraine. It is a Swiss-based nonprofit. What's great about it is that even though it's Swiss-based, we're staffed by Ukrainians who have been living abroad for a while, non-Ukrainians who have a Ukraine connection, people who are displaced Ukrainians who have, recently left Ukraine because of the war. So it, for us, creates a unique opportunity to lobby for Ukraine from abroad, which, hasn't happened that often until recently. So it's just great to be, to have that voice and to have this platform. And we have two programs. One is we do information support. We give critical information to people displaced by the war in Ukraine and in 40 plus countries internationally. And it's a really unique program because we are a leader in critical information. We also provide housing and give free legal help to people. Everything is done online, so visit our website, United for Ukraine. And we're launching another program, our second program, which will help women, and this is something we're very proud of. And it is essentially our effort in economic recovery. And we are going to support micro, small, and medium-sized businesses in Ukraine. And part of that program targets women specifically. Why are we even doing this? Because we really believe that we need to support businesses now, with donations. Businesses who are working, who are surviving, who are relocating, who are, giving jobs and who have the potential to maybe even do some sort of innovation while, the war is going on. And why we would like to target women specifically is because, as I mentioned before, there are so many examples. For example, this business we know in Kharkiv, it's a small family-run cheese company, and the husband has died. He was killed by the Russians at war, and his wife is now left with 2 children, and she has to run this business herself. So these are the types of stories that we want to support because this specific woman has to run a business. She doesn't have experience. She needs funding. She needs mentoring. She needs coaching. So this is essentially what we want to do, and we hope to pilot soon and hope to support around 60 companies this year. And many people, it's not being done. And there's so much to do in this area that we believe is really important, that we're very excited about this.
That's outstanding. And that sort of financial and economic assistance is absolutely fundamental, as we've lost 30% of our GDP over the course of the last year. Lots of people are unemployed, and small, yet at the same time, 70,000 new small businesses have been registered in 2022. So there is that resilience, and I think you're targeting a really fantastic a cohort, and that's actually a really good segue to the things that Yulia is involved with TAPS, supporting families who have lost members in the war, and you're doing lots of things in terms of psychological help and things like that. What is it that you're in particular doing that where you can mobilize women to be either the drivers of this process or the beneficiaries, and how does that work?
How this helped me to work?
No, what is, in terms of what, let's start with this. What you were starting, I cut you off very rudely before, about you were just starting to talk about TAPS. Why don't we talk about, just explain what your organization does?
It's very simple. So we want to help our society, our families who in grief live not only in grief, but they must develop his life for a normal life, because the widows have their children's, and the children's is our future, and we must understand that they live in Ukraine, in this country, in war, and so the society in Ukraine must understand and respect such children. The stronger we will be as a nation if we respect these families. So we try to do this with help with our programs, and so we employ 76 psychologists, for example, yes, for our work, and 90% of them are women, and they work with not only with these families, but they work with military men in combat zones, in hospitals. And we work also with social workers, because we must understand that we must teach the social workers speak, how to say, correct, correctly speaking with such group of people like deceased families. To do this, we developed a lot of programs of mentoring support, organized camps in Western Ukraine. We have large groups of psychologists who work like individually, yes, with these families. We are also developing a rehabilitation center, because we know that after our victory, a large number of soldiers and their families have to go through a certain part of rehabilitation, and we see that the public sector cannot withstand with this. So we want to do everything in advance. I have a staff of volunteers now. It's for 300, but since 24 of February, we have 1,567 volunteers. So all these people want to help stay stronger and go to the victory and help our soldiers and our families live in a normal life. So our mission do everything that we could do, of course, with our donors, with our partners from America, to do our best what we can do.
That's really quite profound. That's it's incredible. And I guess, you know, taking this now to another level, I want to have a sort of a much more, or a little more of a high level discussion about what the impact you think of all of this is, the things that you folks are working on in your organizations. What impact do you expect to have on the rebuilding of Ukraine after the victory? And Yulia, you talked a bit about that. You're sort of the counterpoint to what Putin is doing with our children in the occupied territories, where they're being kidnapped and brainwashed and put up for adoption and turned into zombies. And we all understand that this is a war for the future of Ukraine, and the kinds of things that you're describing are exactly that. But what do you think the examples are for other countries from what you're doing? And you know, what do you think is going to be the impact of women post victory on the development of Ukrainian society?
I think so. Speak about women in society. I think that a woman is a great potential driving force. You know, because the more terrible the challenges of fate, the stronger a woman becomes. It's normal for us. So, and I was convinced of this by my own example and by the example of the women who are with me now, and work with this, all these projects and help militaries and families and go to the combat zone. But the example, the current example of Ukraine can teach other countries the lesson that national independence and territorial integrity are inviolable principles that must be protected. And women's participation is critical to conflict zones and peace, because women are often victims of violence and conflict, and their voices must be heard in decision making. Women can also play the key role in mediation, peace building, and national reconciliation, if I correct, yeah, the word.
Exactly.
So, and the research shows that when women are actually involved in the process of peace building and reconciliation, the chances of a successful end to the conflict and lasting cessation of hostilities increase. So I think that, sorry, men's, that women's is really great power in all conflicts in the world. So we must be involved in this in this process.
Right, you're the healers. I think that's a very, very important point. And Valeria, your women that are working in for Halo Trust probably have work for the next 30 years if they want to. Don't know how many of them want to be sappers for the rest of their lives. What do you think is, you know, extrapolating beyond what they're doing now? What are the experiences do you think they're going to come away from, the takeaways that they're going to have from their current experience and apply to rebuilding the country?
Thank you for your question, Daniel. I don't remember the author, but there is a good book called The Better Angels of Our Nature, where the author says about, he kind of describes the situation that if there will be more women in politics, in other spheres of our life, there will be less violence. And this is applicable to the situation in Ukraine, to the situation in the world as well. And it doesn't matter whether we speak about higher levels like politics, or whether we speak about women who are on their knees searching for tripwires or explosive items. It's good to have both experiences, because men and women, they have their unique experience. And when you have balanced society, in the end, it will yield you some incredible results. And with our women, with those who start as deminers, and they spend their days, weeks, and they see the real impact. They find the mine and they remove it from the ground, and they see the impact, and then they can. This is like a huge contribution to mine-free future of the region, and to the successful future of the country as a whole. And these women, they are driven by personal efforts, by personal contribution, and I think this can help the country and the world a lot.
That's an outstanding response. And Donna, obviously you're putting your stake in the ground on the economic recovery, empowering women to build businesses, etc. How do you see that emerging after the war? Are we building, CEOs of major corporations? Are we building a nation of small businesses? And what impact is that are Ukrainian women and Ukrainian business women going to have on our EU accession aspirations?
I definitely agree with the thought that, we need an equilibrium. We need to have a society where both men and women are represented. I do want to see more women, leading companies. I want to see more Ukrainian women being ambassadors. I want to see more women in the Ukrainian government, more women ministers. That would be great. I think that the women of Ukraine, they need tools to succeed. They need knowledge to become, the leaders, the business leaders of tomorrow. And when we do, start the process of joining the EU, we want these women to be able to get foreign direct investment into their companies, for example. We want more women leaders to be able to access bank loans when the war is over. So now we are preparing ground for future success. We're really thinking strategically, we're really thinking into the future. So that's why we're so excited about, our small contribution to economic recovery, because it is such a vast topic. So there is room for organizations such as ours supporting micro, small, and medium-sized businesses, and specifically women entrepreneurs. And, also, it's just so tough for people in Ukraine. They're nerve-wracked, they're stressed, and they just need someone to talk to support them, to mentor them, to just say it's going to be okay. And especially when you're leading a business, you're just so exhausted and so stressed out that it's great to have that support, to have that psychological support.
But there's a question in a couple questions in the chat that are actually right on point on the points all three of you were making. And one of the questions is, post victory, what are the top three issues that civil society organizations run by women, or have a preponderance of women involved, what are they focusing on now? Which we've covered a bit, but do you think there's going to be a shift in the focus after the victory? So the things that your organizations are doing, how are they going to change after the victory? Donna, you want to kick off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what we're doing now with our organization, and especially, not only in relations to women, but in general, we're really thinking into the future. That's why we're not only focusing on emergency relief, we're thinking what's going to happen next, because we are preparing for an equal, prosperous, democratic Ukraine. What kind of country do we want to see in 5 years, 10 years? So that's why all our programs are targeted for Ukraine being prosperous, for supporting businesses, supporting women to be able to take part in this prosperity. And I think this is really a chance for us to build a new Ukraine that doesn't have corruption, Ukraine that has more women participating in leadership roles. This is the Ukraine I'm excited about. And I think, this is our chance to build Ukraine of tomorrow.
And there was a follow-up question. What other support other than financial do you think the beneficiaries of your programming are going to need? Is
Education. All my life, I was obsessed with this topic, education. Even if we do it on a small scale in our program, we think this is going to have a huge impact, a multiplier effect. But really, we have to reform education, shift education. We just have to, even a progressive person, I'm a product of the Soviet era to a certain extent. So I really want us to help, shift education and contribute to education to develop, bright, progressive thinking.
If you're a product of the Soviet system, I don't, people listening to you wonder why it ever collapsed. But anyway, Yulia, same sort of question. What the things that you're doing now, do you see a change after the victory in terms of what you're going to be doing? Or is it just going to be intensifying the level of engagement that you have with your families?
Our work, I think it will be продовжуватись. Це вже
Continue.
Continue. Yeah. Our work will be continue for a long time, because all our people now have trauma in this war, and psychologically healthy nation is the priority after the victory, because this is our future, and we must do everything that's for this. So we want to build a community of families of fallen heroes for mutual support. It's too very important. And I think we have a lot of work after the victory for many years.
Excellent. And Valeria, you have worked for, as I said, 30 years. Is this just going to continue on? You're going to develop bring more people into your programming? How is there going to be any change after the victory in what you're doing and how you're doing it?
Thank you. I totally agree with Dana about her point that now we are building a Ukraine of tomorrow, future Ukraine. And I also can relate to Yulia's point on the fact that we are going to stay here for many years. And like the things Halo Trust is doing at the moment is kind of like a brick stones to a firm wall where all both men and both women, they are involved in the decision-making process. And I hope that at some point we will reach the situation when there is kind of balance in the stuff.
The last question that I have, or the last issue, and it's one that you now have, each of you has repeated at least twice, and that was the relationship between men and women. That it has to be a dialogue, that there has to be engagement, that there has to be equality. So this whole issue of gender equality is actually quite a profound an important issue in Ukraine as we move forward. British actress Emma Watson, right around 2014 at the Maidan, made a very profound speech at the United Nations where she launched a campaign called He for She, that she was worried that feminism was getting a bad name and that it was looking to be anti-men, but that really what was required was for men to stand up and acknowledge the role of women and to have this dialogue about issues that men are closed about, and things that women may be concerned about. And so, I mean, we always thought of Ukraine, a lot of people thought of Ukraine as a male-dominated society. Those of us who know anything about Ukrainian women, as I said, knew that that was absolutely not the case. But how do you see this actually developing? You've all mentioned it. How do you, is there an issue at all? Or do you just accept it that this is something that's already taking place? The war may have accelerated a trend. I think that between the Maidan and the end of the war, there was a big shift. You could feel even in government with the change in minister and ministerka and ministerka, and the feminization of nouns and things like that. And it's small, but it's important. So how do you see? Is there an issue, and how do you, and if there is or there isn't, how do you see this developing in terms of what Ukrainian society is supposed to look like and aspire to from a gender equality standpoint? I'm sorry, that's a really long introduction because as a man, I have trouble getting this across in a short way. Yulia, go ahead. Why don't we start with you?
I think I say quietly, briefly. So we need to find the middle of the goat, So the woman may be better at dealing with some issues, and the man know that, and it's a normal life when the woman sometimes better. And I think that's in our life now, when the Ukraine in war, we see it quite well, and all the military men, which I speak often, can підтвердити.
Confirm.
Can confirm it, and they always said that if there is no woman in volunteer area or in the combat area, I think that there will be no our victory at all. So without women, there is no victory and no normal life, no normal work, and I think it's a great rule for everyone that women.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Man, you've got lots of these one-liners. We're going to be doing these tweets for the next 3 days. That's outstanding. What about you, Donna? What do you think on this?
I do think that, women to a certain extent run the world, and there's just nobody like Ukrainian women. You see them, you notice them. We're a vibe. That's true. I do aim for more. I would like, for example, just better childcare in the future, better support for moms. I want, women to be able to fight for their rights at work if they are, if they have issues, if there's abuse, because there is an illusion that, not an illusion, yet women are very powerful, and to a certain extent they do run Ukraine, but there's still a big road ahead. And I think that this tragic war will accelerate, the shift for just a more equal society. That's it, just a more equal society for all. And this is what I'm really, looking forward to.
That's excellent. And what about you, Valeria? What do you think about the dialogue with men
You
and
know,
minds? You have a lot of you have a lot of leverage. Let me tell you. Let's go for a walk in that field. Yeah, if you're not happy with the way it's going.
the minefield.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we are not ideal, and there is always a space for improvement. But based on the stories we've seen now on the news, based on the examples we see from the real life, I can proudly say that Ukraine is on a pretty good level, and keeping this level, contributing a little bit more, we will have a great achievements in the future. And you know, like there are lots of examples that Ukraine is a democratic society, and this is probably what separates us from our neighbor. And keeping all our this social cohesion all together, that will help us a lot.
Well, those are amazing answers. We're pretty much out of time. I apologize to people who didn't get your questions answered. You got them in a little late, but you can perhaps ask the Jillian or Alexa to connect you with with our speakers, and you can engage with them directly. I just really want to thank our panel, ladies. You absolutely outstanding. The work you've been doing is outstanding, and frankly, I'm quite encouraged by your responses, especially to the last question. You're very optimistic. You're very forward-looking. You seem to have a great view of optimistic view of the future, and really, you know, that dovetails with the objectives that we had since the Maidan and into this war to build a tolerant, diverse, equal, and democratic society. And you know, all of your attitudes and your work, both your walking the walk and talking the talk, really gives me comfort and encouragement for what we have coming for us in the future. And you know, without women, there is no victory. Thank you all.